You are listening to New Theory Radio. Theory Radio.
Test 1 2 1 2. Hello and welcome to another edition of New Theory Radio here live at the CFRE studios. I'm your host Nav Nanwa. This is the show where we theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. And I'm here with another episode with another great panel of guests. They are two-thirds of the comedy troupe Funcussion.
Yes.
Okay, because the other third was too busy, right?
The best two-thirds.
The best two-thirds. They put on shows within the GTA, and they're here with me to theorize on a couple of really cool topics. I got my friends Maya and Braeden. How's it going?
Not too bad.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, you guys having a good time?
Look at the walls. Look at the color in
I
here.
know.
It's great.
There's a reason why all my
see
photos
on
are
the
black
radio.
and white.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's a vibrant green. Does that help?
I mean, that's descriptive enough, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very vibrant green. I've always complained about it. That's why all my photos on my Instagram are black and white. I don't like to show it.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. It's too lively, especially if we're talking about something depressing. I don't want it to be lively in here.
Well, we're not going to talk about depressing stuff, so
it might get depressing.
We're going to try and err not on the depressing side.
Actually, if anything, it might be more sour. But
like jadedness will come out. I think
a lot of jadedness, but that's why I love doing the show. Actually, before I begin, do one of you want to talk about what Funcussion is?
We both look at each other. We're like,
It's like, where's the third? Where's the third?
Arun knows. He's the one who knows. No, we're a comedy sort of trio that met doing a couple of other projects, and we kind of split off from a previous group, mainly because we found our sort of life experience and sense of humor matched a little bit better between the three of us than with the rest of the group. We're all doing wonderful things right now.
This is like a new edition Belle Biv DeVoe situation.
A little bit, but like less animosity than all that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we kind of noticed that when we were developing premises for sketches for the first review, we were going to put together, and like 90% of the stuff was about the workplace, because we all work in offices. Two of us actually work in the same place now. Mm-hmm. And so we started to theme the review about that, and it went over pretty well, I guess. I don't know.
So
people from our offices came and they recognized themselves in some of the scenes.
Oh, you guys actually made fun of people in the office?
Yes.
Well, I mean, not directly by name, but more or less, yeah.
Yeah, more like characters.
Situations or things that have happened. And,
You're doing a scene and they're like, "That's me!" From the audience. So that's always fun. And then, we were meaning to put together our next review. We are kind of casually working on it, but our director went back to school.
Oh.
So we've been on a bit of a hiatus doing like the show's aspect. Yep. And that's still basically the short story of who we are. Oh, by the way, our name came from the time when Maya got her first concussion.
I've had another one since.
She's had another one since.
I've never had, I'm not gonna lie, I've never had a concussion.
They're terrible. Don't get it.
So were you sensitive to light for a long time?
Yes. And I find, so after my second concussion, which I have now theoretically healed from completely, I am still sensitive to motion and sound.
Really?
So I find now it's like, I work in an open concept office.
Yeah.
And I want to murder the people that sit next to me because they type too loud.
Oh my God.
And I'll complain about it to other people and they kind of look at me like, Maya, I think it's fine. They're kind of typing like how people normally type, but it's driving me insane.
One time somebody was like, told me I sip coffee too loud.
Oh, like wait, do you slurp at the end?
I guess at the beginning, but it's like one of those things where you're like, I had no idea.
All this time, I've enjoyed coffee for 20 years.
Horrible dick, just like, and this person who I used to work with was just like, can you stop?
It's like, calm down, man.
so
It's not
loud?
ramen. It's
Yeah.
not ramen that you're drinking.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. People can be sensitive to noise in the office. Oh, and then there's the whole thing about the fish.
Yes.
Whoa, what's up with the fish?
So we did a scene because at my office there was this one person who had a habit of microwaving fish,
like
Canned.
like canned
Oh,
tuna,
canned fish.
like canned tuna.
Oh, gross.
Which
why would you microwave
that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not good hot.
That, I always thought toasted tuna melts were gross too.
Yeah, no.
The,
I guess
the
that's
idea
yeah.
of toasting a piece of bread with
fish.
tuna and cheese on top.
Blech.
I don't know.
Her whole thing was like, I need it for my diet, but I was like, it doesn't need to be hot.
No.
There's no diet that's like your food has to be like
Hot?
90 seconds microwaved or it doesn't work.
Was it one of
Like,
those
you'll
health
gain
fads
weight.
where if you warm it up, you get
I don't know.
rid of
She was
some
from
of the
Russia, and like
toxins,
I
or-
didn't.
Don't mention that.
I
Wait,
didn't-
sorry, I missed that. What'd you say?
She was from Russia.
Oh.
So like
I mean, she's still currently technically.
she's actually very
is
nice
from
otherwise,
Russia.
but like we had to like I didn't.
We're getting technical. But, yeah.
Do you
People
feel like
were-
she'll listen to this?
I
Oh,
don't-
definitely.
No.
Oh yeah.
Just joking. I have no idea who she is. I've never met her.
no. I mean, it was just more like people were a bit intimidated because she was very fit,
Oh okay.
and
She's
like
jacked.
you were like, hey, maybe there were like a lot of general announcements, like maybe
Yeah.
don't microwave fish, and she was like, that doesn't apply to me.
Maybe that
I need this.
maybe that's a new superfood, just microwavable
Gross.
canned tuna.
Gross. I'm not here for it. I'm not.
We should theorize on that.
And there'll be like $21 tuna bowls, like hot ones, in the food courts.
Imagine like hot pokey. That'd be so gross.
I mean, there's a place. Okay, not that I want to go down this spiral that we're going down right
Let's
now,
do
but
it.
there's a poke bowl place near my work, and they will sear the tuna.
Oh yeah.
So it's like part of the tuna will be seared, so it's
Yeah.
more like a ahi tuna.
Oh,
actually
gotcha,
sounds
deal.
good.
Gotcha. Yeah,
It
okay.
is. It's delightful, but not microwaved, so it's different.
Yeah,
It's
like
fancy,
searing it
it's
on a grill is
torched
like another.
with a flame.
And this is definitely like canned, like taken out of the ocean and like sitting in brine for
Oh, and
months.
And it's wait, is it warmed up with the brine too?
Like she just puts it on some lettuce
Oh.
and microwaves it.
So
So,
the
it's
lettuce
not
is
only
soaked in
tuna; it's
brine.
also hot lettuce.
Oh god, that's gross. I might have to pause the podcast
Yeah, like.
as I puke in my mouth.
But and the third factor is, of course, that once you do this, the smell permeates the entire office for at least
I bet
40
it
minutes.
does. I bet it does for sure.
Like you go into the washrooms and like the fish smell overpowers the washroom smell. And
Okay, but we're not here to talk about fish.
But I also never want to be the smelly guy in the office though.
that's always a
that's
big fear I
true.
have.
That's true.
Have you guys ever done a skit about that?
No, that's true. We haven't.
No.
I don't think. We have one about a guy who yells about seagulls.
Is that real?
Well, I mean, it's these two people in the office. The scene is technically these two people that work in the same office professing
Let's just
their
describe
love
all
to
of our
one
scenes
another.
instead of like.
Okay, let's not. Let's
Yeah.
we're doesn't matter.
Actually, before we get into the topic, how did you get your concussions?
So my first concussion happened when I was cycling downhill.
Okay, so you're
And-
actually doing something physical then.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And a woman doored me. It was not fun.
Oh man.
Yes.
Wow, that's shitty.
Yeah. My second concussion happened because there may or may not have been alcohol involved.
Oh, I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
'cause-
and just having myself a swell time, and in pure Maya fashion, just lost control of my body.
Did you slip on ice or?
No, it happened in the bar.
Okay.
It happened in the club, bar, whatever.
Were you
yeah.
attempting a handstand or?
I actually don't remember.
Oh, you just woke up with a
Yeah,
concussion.
I woke up.
You have
I
no
just-
idea what happened.
No, I don't. I actually don't know what happened. And whenever I kept asking people, do you know what happened to me? They were just like, no, man, I was on the dance floor when it happened and I heard it. And, yeah.
They heard your head just go.
Well, and it was basically like
On
all
a
I-
dance floor where the music would have been
God.
like, if you've ever been on one,
And
They don't-
It was
it's
one
not
of those things of
softly
like,
playing
I
in
don't
the
remember
background.
what I was doing just before. I just remember people standing over me being like, oh my God, are you okay?
like she's dead.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. That's
So.
crazy. What a start to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. I think we're gonna have some fun on this episode.
Perfect.
No more
Tuna
talking about tuna and
No.
it being in the microwave. I don't
It
think
might come up
Oh.
organically,
Organically.
but I'll try not to.
Maybe it'll come up during our first topic, and that's I want to theorize on binge watching. Actually, a good friend of mine who writes for Global News, Arti Patel. Shout out to Arti. She told me to send her a link of this after, because I told her we'd be referencing her article. It's no secret nowadays that's the new way that we all pretty much consume TV is through binge watching. Thanks to things like Netflix, Crave, Amazon Prime, you name it. So I just wanted to get your theory on whether binge watching has ruined the way we've consumed content. And do you think there's a deeper problem in people that pursue binge watching, or are we just overthinking it? And maybe Braeden will begin with you.
Well, the first thing I thought of when I read the topic was, are we watching more TV content than we ever did before? Because I remember when, I was a kid in the 90s and early 2000s, we watched hours and hours of mindless TV.
Especially after school, too.
After school, on weekends. I remember, days home from school, you just sun up, sundown, you would watch whatever was on. Mm-hmm. And you had the limited choices of what was available on air at that time, sort of linear programming. And then now we have the binge watching phenomenon where, at least you get to sort of pick stuff you like. Mm-hmm. But it is actually, it's changing the way TV is written as well, right? A lot of these streamable series are structured in the writing in a completely different way.
Yeah.
The cliffhanger is no longer important because they don't have to keep you hooked for a week to come back. You're going to watch the next episode in 15 seconds.
Actually, just on that, so the article that my friend Archie did write is, I watched every episode in a single night. Have we forgotten how to enjoy TV? So before we sort of get into the psyche around binge watching, to your point around how a lot of shows themselves are being structured in a way where you have to binge watch it, do you feel like that anticipation that you would normally get when you would wait every Sunday to watch, that HBO show is slowly becoming harder and harder to deal with because you're used to having all these shows sort of in front of you at the same time and that you can consume it all at once?
I have a couple friends who they have the 3-season rule, mm-hmm. where they won't even attempt a series until there are at least 3 seasons worth of episodes to binge. Because otherwise it's just you get that almost withdrawal feeling. You feel a little sad when it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into that weird gap in the middle where my girlfriend and I we'll watch an entire series, and then there's weeks where what are we going to watch? Mm-hmm. We don't know what to watch, and there's hundreds of these award-winning drama series, comedy series to pick from, but you're just kind of you feel lost until you have this thing. Until you have that thing where you're okay, what we're going to watch. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it does. It's definitely a different psychological. I kind of hate linear TV, and sometimes you turn it on, and I'm just well, one. We're no longer used to ads outside of YouTube, I guess.
Even Facebook. I've seen Facebook videos that are more than 10 minutes, and 3 minutes in, they'll just cut to an ad, and what the fuck?
It's so jarring.
Yeah,
but because people have abandoned cable TV in a large part to go to streaming services like Netflix, they've had to cram more ads into the leftover cable. So you watch a show, and I'm just flabbergasted at how many ads there are and how long they are.
Yeah, it feels like you watch maybe a minute of TV, and then there's 3 minutes of commercials, and it's will this ever end?
Or it's a movie that's on cable, and the movie is not struck. The movie does not have ad breaks written into it.
Yeah.
So they'll just cut into an ad break in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah.
And just leave the rest of that point. The scene is just over, and you don't.
It doesn't matter.
As someone who thinks about story structure a lot, you're no, that's not.
You can't.
You're ruining it.
That's how I know. I'm actually interviewing two writers who are against commercials.
I would say Braden's more of a writer than I am. But...
Really?
Oh, shut up.
Maya, what are your thoughts on binge watching?
I have a very personal story when it comes to binge watching. I personally love it. However, it did get to a point for me where it started to ruin my relationship.
Really? You're
with my boyfriend,
yeah.
Oh,
okay.
And to the point where it's he came home and was this needs to stop.
What show was it?
Just honestly, I pick New Girl or The Office. Majority of the time it was reruns of stuff that I've already watched.
Yeah.
and I'm just sitting there mindlessly consuming it. The problem is that, and this kind of touches on the second article that you sent with the PhDs, but I get home from work, I'm stressed out and whatever, and I just want something mindless to kind of disconnect and let myself sort of unravel from the day. But it started to turn into a habit that turned into an addiction. And the funniest part of it all is when my partner called me out on it, saying, you're watching way too much TV.
Yeah.
I legitimately reacted like an addict. I was like, fuck you. No, I don't. I don't watch too much TV. I don't know.
You don't watch enough TV.
Yeah.
If you love me, you would watch TV.
Basically. And it took me a long time to realize that, oh, yeah, no, I do. I'm spending too much time
Also,
watching
binge-watching
TV.
caused my second concussion for sure.
Definitely.
But like that's the problem with excess. Like the fact that we have so much available to us.
And people are constantly giving you recommendations, saying you should be watching this or you should be watching that. And I mean,
I find it interesting when we rewatch shows that we've already seen. So I rewatched Mad Men completely last year.
Yeah.
Right on.
And I'm glad I did because I found that I caught on to things I didn't catch on the first time around. But then I realized, I'm like, oh, I literally rewatched a show that I watched a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to feel. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, did I just waste time? Like,
well, from a writing perspective, I love rewatching shows for a couple of reasons. The first one being what you sort of touched on is that you miss things the first time you see it, and then
exactly.
you see it the second time around, and you go, oh yeah, that plot point didn't actually come out of nowhere. The writers were dropping
Yeah, you kind of
hints
start
the
to
whole
watch
time.
it, like trying to read the script on the screen, being like, okay, you can kind of see how they, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I knew how to do it.
And the other reason I think why I rewatch stuff is because it's comforting, or it's like I know that I'm going to enjoy it. It's like going to a restaurant and always ordering the same thing. You know you're going to be satisfied at the end of that meal because you ordered the thing that you like.
Exactly.
And there's always that thing I find when you have a regular restaurant where you're like, I've never ordered this, but I'm like worried. I know I'll enjoy that thing, but if I
ordered this new thing, I might not enjoy it, and then it's like I've ruined my experience to one of my favorite restaurants.
I had a binge watching weekend recently where I was like home alone for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's still winter. I'm going to binge watch some content, right?
Yeah.
And I found myself panicking that I was like, I had to pick the right thing. It's like, I only have 2 hours right now to watch a movie.
Yeah.
It has to be it has to be good. And I remember I watched like the opening 5 minutes of several movies before I was like, nope, this is not worth my 2 hours.
Oh man.
Like that Motley Crue thing that came out.
Yeah, was it good? Have you seen it?
I watched the first 5 minutes and I was like, I don't like this. It's not worth my next
I think when
2
I heard that
hours.
Machine Gun Kelly was playing Tommy Lee, I was like, no, thank you. It's okay.
I don't know much about Motley Crue. Like I was never like into their you hear it on the radio, and I was never really like invested in their story.
Same.
And
I just
I'm
thought it'd be a cool.
it's like, okay, well,
story.
sometimes these band biopics are interesting, but it was very much just like, we're badass partiers and fuck you if you don't like it. And that was the ethos of the movie, but as opposed to like mirroring that and kind of showing how it was a bit hollow. Anyway, that's not about binge watching. That's a specific thing. But
it's a good point around choice, because I think a lot of the times I know people that will binge watch an entire show on Netflix and then tell me after, oh, that was such a waste of time. Like I really just I did my best to get into it and give it a chance by watching the entire season, but I won't watch season 2 because it was shit. But then it's like you wasted 10 hours of your life.
Yeah. And
so there was a weird anomaly with BoJack Horseman.
With
season 1.
You better not talk shit about BoJack Horseman.
I'm not.
Because that's my show.
No. I'm not going to. But I remember I started.
He's watching it right now.
I am. I'm totally streaming. I'm rewatching the entire season right now. The entire first season.
But it was like the first season came out, and I remember I started watching it, and I'm like, "What is this show? Like, I don't know how I feel about this." And then it wasn't until the last episode that I was like, "Oh fuck, this is so much more."
I know.
And you started to get into like this realization of like, oh, this is going to be something big.
Yeah.
And apparently because of BoJack Horseman, it's now a rule, especially with, I think, Netflix reviewers, that they have to watch the full season in order to actually write the review.
Oh, so they can't watch episode by episode.
That's like one of the biggest changes since like the binge watching era has started is the season is now the like unit of storytelling.
Yeah. So so to Braden's point earlier, the story structure.
Yeah. So like, you'll start a plot thread in episode 1 and you may not deal with it again until episode 4 or like whatever. But the whole 8 or 10 or 13 episodes concludes all of it in kind of like, it's almost like a novel.
Which I don't know how I feel about that, because I love, especially when it comes to episodic shows, and I would say the only real episodic ones that I watch nowadays are shows on HBO, because I don't have HBO Go, which is like the streaming service. So for me, when I'm watching a Game of Thrones, or when I'm watching, I used to watch Boardwalk Empire, and it would have to be on a weekly basis. And the one thing I would love is if I was left with a cliffhanger, I would always go online to read articles about that episode and allow these writers to dissect what was happening, and also allow them to show me things I may have missed. So, but in that instance, what you mentioned about how Netflix is now making it rule for reviewers to watch the entire season, I feel like you lose that ability to really appreciate the singular episode versus having to watch the entire season.
Right.
To get what's going on.
It's like in the past, like a single episode would be like, that's an Emmy episode. Like that's something different and brand new and like innovative. And now it's sort of like, well, among the 8, like these 3 were pretty good, but there's more experimentation and less.
I've actually noticed that too,
like,
where you'll see when you binge watch a show on Netflix, there's always like 1 or 2 episodes that are totally
they'll bust the like traditional structure of their episode and do like they'll tell the story from the someone else's point peripheral character's perspective or something like that, or do like a way back
episode or something else.
Origin story for someone who's like that kind of thing.
I remember watching Glow on Netflix in the second season, because my wife, I'm a big wrestling fan, my wife isn't, so to convince her to watch Glow was a pretty big battle, but she got into it.
It's a good show.
I love it. It's a great show. And in the second season, I think one of the episodes was an actual episode of Glow.
Yes.
And I know for a fact it kind of went over my wife's head because it just was different.
Yeah.
When I had to tell her, I was like, hey, no, this is like them showing us an actual episode that the characters would put on. And to me, I was like, oh, this is a really cool episode. I like it. But then it was almost like, were they just doing it to fill time?
It's like that it was like that Broad City episode I was telling you about, where they just, I don't know, their 5th season just concluded, the last one, and like the first episode of that is just 22 minutes of Instagram stories.
Oh, is it actually?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It tells a narrative, but it's like everything is just done in the perspective of like however long you get.
Wow.
Like 6 seconds. I don't know how you...
No, Instagram's...
How long do you have? It doesn't matter. They're all Instagram stories, and that's the innovation that they did, which was cool.
There's one stat in the Global News article that my friend wrote that's pretty alarming, is that the average single sitting time for someone binge watching between the ages of 14 and 33 is 5 hours. Yeah. That's crazy.
But
is that a day?
Didn't we watch 5 hours of TV when it was just network and cable?
You get home.
Plus, most big blockbusters right now are about 4 hours in the movie theater too. Like Star Wars, I think the last Star Wars was 4 hours.
4 hours?
What?
I think that's a little high.
That's excessive.
Or it's close to 4 hours. Like I think Avengers Endgame should have.
The new Avengers was coming out as 3.
Yeah, it's 3.
Just
okay,
over 3.
Because last year was long. I felt like last year's was long.
That's another crazy innovation.
What?
Like the 22 movie binge watch.
Oh, did you hear about that? So I heard they're paying people to do that.
They would have to.
Yeah. They're paying people to watch the entire Marvel universe.
The Marvel universe, which is like almost 2 full 24-hour days of movie.
I feel like that would be... You're setting yourself up for disappointment because you're probably going to be sitting there theorizing the entire time. Like, I've got the end game figured out, guys. Like, they dropped all these hints throughout all the movies, and then you're going to have this
Captain Marvel is Thanos. All the signs are there.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I think this is when everyone's just going to shut off the podcast. But like, these guys ruined Endgame for me. But that's an interesting point. But I also find it weird that are you going to have people sit in a movie theater for 22 hours straight?
There's going to be some breaks, I imagine.
Without bathing, without...
Is it 22 hours? I feel like it's going to be
it's
longer.
22. It's 48 hours, almost.
Oh, yeah.
Because each movie is like 2.5 plus.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's
are they
going to
have? Are they going to set up a sleeping room? Will they sleep in the hallway?
I don't know.
Anyway,
it's probably better not to sleep. Just go all the way.
But it's the ultimate like binge watching stunt.
It is,
because it's probably on record as like potentially like the longest most expensive TV series season ever.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Because it is almost now structured like
Yeah.
a TV series, because everything is kind of coalescing into like the finale where all the characters kind of tie up their
loose ends,
their plot lines.
Do both of you set any rules now? Well, Maya, it's probably a good question for you when it comes to getting into a new show, that you will pace it out, or are you still, hey, I'm going all in?
No, I definitely have rules now.
Yeah. You sound like a recovering addict.
I am to a certain extent.
I don't mean to laugh because I know it's a real problem.
No,
but
it's like I do have rules. Do I break those rules? Absolutely.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's, if I'm watching a longer show, so I'm really into Shameless right now.
Yeah.
I will go on the treadmill or I'll go on a bike. So it's like I'm doing something or I'm cooking. Like I'm not just vegetating on the couch. I have to be doing something. So it's like I'm doing my nails. I'm cooking. I'm on the treadmill.
Yeah.
I'm on the bike. And then even with new shows, I try and cap it at 2 or 3 episodes max that I can watch in one sitting, and then I have to pace it out over a little bit.
I still remember finishing season 2 of Stranger Things in the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
Because I remember...
I broke it recently with Russian Doll. I finished that over the course of the weekend.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
I did season 2 of Stranger Things in a day.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was because... like we had been out the night before and we're just like, I'm gonna sit in bed and watch like
it came out during Halloween.
TV.
I remember I was
and
out
everyone
the night
was
before.
at Halloween parties and like.
And I remember my wife and I we stayed out late. We got up super late. It was like noon, and we were like, the only thing we can do is just stay at home. We threw on Stranger Things, and I think it also came down to the point where I think we finished. I think it was 10 episodes. I think we did like 7 in one sitting. And, like, obviously we got up and made food.
Yeah.
And,
we were like, okay, we put it on as, like, we're going to Uber Eats order, like, lunch.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to be holed up in your house.
And then, like, we'll put this on to watch, like, what we eat. And then, like, next one. And by the time you know it, it's, like, 8 p.m. and we've seen the whole thing.
I talk about this as I prepare for a full weekend of wrestling watching, because it's WrestleMania this weekend, which is, like... wrestling Super Bowl,
right?
But there's like other wrestling events that take place like starting tomorrow night, and pretty much I told my wife, I'm like, I got my spot on the couch, like I'm not doing anything this weekend, I'm just gonna sit and watch my wrestling. So it's like a prolonged binge, but but obviously during the day I'm not binging, but
I think it's different if you're like, this is like a planned event and not just something you're doing
like sitting,
as like a habitual activity, right? If you're like, I know the weekend of April, whatever.
Yeah, that's my weekend.
It's wrestling weekend, and I'm gonna like,
yeah.
Find something else to do because I'm busy.
Is this good? Are you guys gonna write this in your next show about the guy that blocks off an entire weekend a year to watch pro wrestling?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely coming to that show, and I will yell, "Hey, that's me!"
That's me.
The thing too that's like just so crazy, and I'm totally changing the topic because this is about one of the stats in the study that was in there. She was saying, we recognize that people who are binge watching tend to be more stressed, anxious, and depressed.
Yeah.
But they didn't know which one came first. Was it that they were watching because they were stressed, anxious, and depressed, or did the continual watching make them stressed, anxious, and depressed? For myself, it's like, I know if I'm stressed, anxious, and depressed, I'm gonna go.
So what you're gonna do is watch a bunch of people who are experiencing like intense conflict for hours to relax. Like that's what TV shows are, right? It's like people have problems.
Yeah, like do you? So if you are feeling stressed, anxious,
I'll go for a comedy. I'll go something that's lighthearted. I'll go to characters that I know and love.
Yeah, just
that I know the antics that they're going to get into, because I want someone to make me laugh. And but it's definitely, and it's such a thing. It's a crutch.
Yeah, well, like I remember when I lived alone for a long time. Like Netflix was my roommate, where you just kind of put stuff on so that it wasn't quiet in the house.
So basically, we're all going to turn into zombies where we just like click into our headsets.
And they're making, I think there's something like 500 scripted shows currently in production right now.
Oh, there's a lot.
For Netflix?
Just like no, I mean like all told.
Oh, okay.
But like 500 shows.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Making, like 3 to 22 episodes.
Get ready.
So, last thing I want to ask you both about this topic is there a difference between binging a TV show versus binging a podcast? As we stay
I
silent.
don't know,
for a couple
because
seconds.
like I feel like I saw this funny meme or like picture someone put on Twitter the other day, and it was like what listening to a podcast feels like, and it was like this kid in front of like one of those like ice cream cone things, and there's like the people in the ad eating ice cream and having a good time, and he's sitting there with an ice cream bowl laughing like by himself in the room. Where you're kind of like, I know, I'm with those people when it's the same crowd in the podcast over and over. You kind of start to feel like you're in the room hanging out, and then of course they don't answer you.
I guess it's different because it's, well, depending on the podcast you're listening to, like this is obviously mine's more conversational, but if you're listening to one like one that's more story based, then maybe it feels more episodic and maybe it gives you the same feeling. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I mean, right now I'm binging 10% Happier.
Okay.
And for me...
Are you?
Yes, I am.
As a result?
No. Are you binging, or are you 10% happier right now?
Yeah, that's
I think it does actually make me 10% happier because it makes me just more aware of the things to. It's a mindfulness for people who aren't aware. It's a mindfulness podcast, and they talk a lot about meditation and what it means to be happy and how do you achieve those kinds of things.
Sweet.
And yeah, so for me, I don't feel bad binging that because it feels like I'm doing something to better myself.
That's sweet.
So that's why I feel like with a podcast, I wouldn't feel as guilty binging it versus a TV show where it's like a little bit more mindless.
And I think at a certain point with both, I think your conscious sometimes kicks in. It's like, hey, this is enough. Like,
I try to like still go to bed at a decent time. If I'm been like, what, you're like, okay, it's now this time. Gonna not watch episode.
It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I got work tomorrow.
Yeah, it's sort of like,
if
if I'm by myself, that rule gets broken more often.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I'm gonna
if you don't have your significant other sort of like...
It's 4 a.m., but I'm almost done True Detective, so I want to find out what happens.
That was actually the last thing on binging, because I think we need to move on. But that True Detective season 1 was one that I did binge like in one day.
It's not that many episodes either.
And I think I only remember the first episode and the last two because everything was just a blur. And I remember having it on consecutively. I won't tell you how I got the episodes, but this was a couple years ago. And I remember just watching it. And then when I finished it, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But then when someone asked me what the show was about,
you don't really remember.
I don't really remember.
Obviously.
Yeah, I was like, oh, detectives, Yellow King.
Yeah. Like, I think, I mean, I think they were deliberately vague about the results of the case, but
yeah,
that's an artistic choice, I guess. I don't know. I have the same memory where I'm like, what did happen?
But that's also one of the things of like sometimes you're binging something and you don't even realize it. Like you've stopped sort of paying attention and life is kind of happening, but this is now just playing in the background, which I do with just regular shows that I like to binge anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I think we can do an entire episode on binging.
Kind of.
I think we're binging on the topic of binge watching. Let's so meta. Let's move on. Let's being that the Funcussion troupe, which is YouTube plus another person, do comedy around the workplace. I thought it'd be great to talk about work-life balance. I've known you for quite some time. We've had this chat numerous times, and I thought it'd be good to talk about it again, this time with Braeden involved, mainly because I stumbled upon an article that says that even though millennials have more flexibility at work, they still feel like they don't have a proper work-life balance. And I'd love to get your theory on this and whether you think it's actually true. One thing that came to mind for me was, having worked in a flexible work environment, there are times where I felt that I truly didn't have a proper work-life balance, because even when I was working from home, I found that my workday got extended, if that made sense, because of just not because of being distracted, but because of it was very hard to actually separate myself from my work eventually and do something else, because I was like, oh, this needs to get done, and all of a sudden I'm working into the evening. So
and you also don't have that like ritual of like, I'm closing the laptop,
I'm
standing
going
up and
home,
putting my coat on, whatever, and I'm gonna leave. And like there's a sort of gap of time where you're transiting home or whatever it is.
And that's what usually happens for me if I'm
Yeah.
working from home. I'm like, oh, well, this is normally the time that I'm, transiting or whatever, so I
Yeah.
can keep answering a few things or just like wrap up a couple of other things. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal. But it is this issue of we are on 24/7. And I think what was really interesting in the article was, and it's something that I strongly kind of believe in, but this notion of, for me, we do have the flexibility of working from home 1 or 2 days a week, but I also sort of feel like if my entire job, my entire function can be executed from the comfort of my laptop, why do I even need to be in this office at all?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I need to go through the hassle of getting dressed, putting on makeup, and going to the office when I can function just as effectively from home? And the idea also of like, we're salaried, so there's going to be times
You're not being
where
paid like for a chunk of hours daily, right?
yeah, and there's
sort of.
yeah, and there's going to be times where you work more and overtime because it's busier. There's a lot of projects and shit just needs to get done. Fine. And then there's going to be times where it's a little bit slower, but the hours are not compensated at that point in time. And I think that's also a little bit frustrating because for me personally, it's like if I don't have a lot of stuff to work on, I just start to become a nuisance. Like I'm going around and I'm bothering people versus like.
Do you like working from home?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like I get way more shit done when I'm working from home because I don't have people constantly coming to my desk asking me, oh, just one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just this one little thing, because now your attention gets pulled away. It might only be 30 seconds to a minute and a half, but it's 4 or 5 times a half hour every hour.
Totally.
And then suddenly your ability to sit and focus on something is completely diminished, especially when I'm trying to figure out a fucking strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be locked in a room, just like leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I need to, I'll grab a couple people and talk through the logic of it. But it's really frustrating. It's just, I just have one quick question. just one.
I think there's like 2 molds of people when it comes to work from home as well, where like some people are like, I get 100% more done when I'm working from home. And like, I know my manager right now, he's definitely one of those people who's like, I get up at 8, like early. I don't have to transit like, a million years from Barrie. I can get a lot done. And yeah, I think he probably goes over the line of it. And then there's other people who definitely like can't be trusted because they're just like, like, oh yeah, I'm working on this article that
turn
I'm
on the
reading
laptop,
from.
they'll turn on
like,
Skype. And
But I think it's also...
you go on the like the I don't know if you use Slack, right?
No.
At work?
No.
No? Okay.
I've used that.
Yeah. So there's always like the goof around channels and stuff, and people
Yeah.
are like posting GIFs and stuff.
But it's also one of those things of like...
I'm not one of those people, in case you're listening.
just to confirm. No, but it's one of those things of like, if you have an employee who gets their stuff done, they do quality work, they hit their deadlines, they overexceed at certain points or whatever, there should be a certain, extended level of trust that's given to those individuals of like, obviously they know how to time manage, they know how to juggle their projects, so give them a little bit more of that freedom. So I totally get that.
So the actual study was saying that millennials, even though they're getting flexible work environments, don't feel like they still get a good work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that that's maybe coming from a place where their boss is maybe not entrusting them?
Absolutely.
I was going to say, I think it has a lot to do with your personal relationship with like your manager, what your organization is like, and like what your job is, right? Because a lot of it, I think, comes down to like the age of the cell phone, and that has crushed the separation between like 9 to 5 and
Home life.
workouts. Because if I know plenty of people who receive work-related calls well into the evening every day,
Yeah.
and like are like, oh shit, I gotta go deal with this problem, that problem. And I mean, like, if that's the relationship you have with your your management. Like, I mean, that's going to eat your work-life balance pretty badly if you kind of have to feel like you can't commit to like a relaxing activity that's going to be
it's a cultural
time-consuming.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
it has a lot to do with work culture, definitely.
Yeah, and it's your managers. Do your managers not only talk about work-life balance, but do they preach it? Do they live it?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you come into the office at 8 a.m, your manager's already been there for an hour and a half, and you leave the office at 6 o'clock and your manager is still there, that's going to feel bad, especially in a competitive market like Toronto. They might say, oh, no, go home. It's fine. I'm just wrapping up a couple of things. But you are going to internalize that as I should be here at least as long as my manager.
Or even it's one of those things where it goes back to a sense of fear where, hey, if I'm going to work from home, I'm working the entire day just because I don't want my manager to think
that I'm not
actually working.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what it is. Because I remember the first time I worked from home, or I had the ability to work from home, I was a little paranoid too. I was like, oh, there's a lot of trust in me to get my shit done. So I'm going to just keep my computer on, just not let anyone bother me, just going to continue to do work until I feel like I'm in a good spot. And I remember that first time I worked from home, which was, I would say like 4 or 5 years ago, I think I ended up feeling like I worked the entire day because I just didn't know when to stop. Like, it was just weird.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a challenge.
Yeah. I guess it depends on like the nature of your work. Like, I actually worked from home every day for about 5 years as a freelancer. But the nature of that work was like project's done.
Yeah.
If it takes you 2 hours, great. If it takes you 9 hours, too bad.
I think for me, and maybe Maya can relate to, coming from a consumer packaged goods background where it's constantly, oh, you don't have work to do? There's work to do. Like, maybe think harder. You can probably find something to do.
Yeah.
And there's always that encouragement to go above and beyond and to always find work to do.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately with like freelance.
Yeah, freelance.
What you have is what you have.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
I mean, like, you can hustle to some degree, which is why I don't do it as a full-time gig anymore.
Yeah, I'm actually, full transparency, in my current role, I'm on contract. And, because you mentioned earlier about when you're sometimes on salary, it's very hard to keep track of your hours. And for the most time, you're probably going overboard when it comes to the amount of hours that you're working. For me, I feel less bad now when I work overtime because I know I can just bill it. So it feels a lot better. And it probably also encourages me, oh, okay, if I'm putting in extra hours, it's not the worst thing in the world. I can just put it on my billings for like the rest of the week.
I know people too who are like, I'm setting boundaries. It's like if I receive a work-related email at 5:01, I'm not responding to it until 9:01 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's like, you don't call me on weekends. I don't do anything. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's a double-sided coin, right? Because it's like all coins are double-sided.
But then there's also like
double-edged sword.
Like type A's that I've worked with that are just constant workaholics.
And that's how you burn out.
But like that's true too of like the competitive market.
Yeah.
Like down here as well is like, oh, okay, you'd like to say I'm cutting you off from outside of the year 9 to 5, buddy over here.
Willing to
I
do
can
it.
call him midnight.
Yeah.
So bye.
And it does set you up for wear and tear and just burnout. And for myself personally, I went through a pretty intense burnout phase because I just didn't know how to cope and I didn't know how to manage it. And it was specifically when I was working at an agency and I had a very, very high maintenance client. And it was just, she's calling me midnight, 1 a.m, freaking out about something. And it was relentless. And if you can't set those boundaries, it's so easy to just lose your mind. Like, you remember, I would be coming to practices and I would be in tears. And I'm just like, I don't know.
We had to have Maya cry time at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, you
I was
have
just
this sort of like
legitimately losing my mind.
What's going on with you this week? Oh, like Maya's crying in the corner.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was kind of sad.
And then it's like you're not serving yourself at that point in time. And this is something that I always preach is like, you have to take care of yourself first because at the end of the day, no one else will. And especially a company. If you think a company has your best interest in mind, fucking forget it. They don't give a shit. Like Braeden was saying, it's like, oh, you don't want to do this? Like, I got, 20 other people who want to do it. So you just need to kind of come to terms with those things of where are those comfortable boundaries for you. It's easier in some industries than others, for sure. CPG is very competitive, and there is an unspoken expectation that you're going to be working ridiculous overtime hours, as well as working on your projects and working on, the side projects, the charitable stuff, the people growing projects, right? And so
above and beyond.
Yeah. So that you can prove that you're management material.
Well, and that's what it is, because I find that, especially since this feedback is coming from millennials, and I think the article also mentions Gen Z, which is kind of scary, because Gen Z is, I think, anyone past 1995 or even 98. Or if they're coming in with this mentality that they're going to go balls to the wall, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say burnout is bound to happen, because there's only so much that you could actually do in that time, where ultimately you probably do end up finding yourself in a crossroads.
There are quite a few studies that suggest that, like, after a certain point too, like, the quality of your output is so bad anyway that like you might as well stop.
Yeah.
Because it's like you hit 10 hours of continuous focus on one thing, it starts to go like,
just decline
to the point where you're like sleep deprived and you're legally insane.
Yeah.
Well, and
right. And so like, how good is your work going to be?
That's what I was going to
at
say.
that
And
point,
I feel
right?
like part of the, and I think it kind of, part of that work-life balance piece too is like, it's also easier to work longer hours when you truly believe in the work that you're doing. But how many people do you know that truly love and believe to their core what the work that they are doing is meaningful?
Mm-hmm.
And
17.
I feel like I love that you have a number. And I feel like a lot of people in our generation want their work to have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to this crossroads of like, I'm working so hard, what am I working so hard for, to become this manager of what, of this company that does what? And then all of a sudden you start to have this internal conflict. I did anyways, of like, my work means nothing to me and it is consuming my life. Mm-hmm. And that just fucking sucks. There's no balance there. And so...
And then you hit the binge watching hard.
It all relates.
Oh my God, give me my new girl.
It all relates.
Buffering. What the fuck?
Literally. It all comes full circle back to binge watching. So I guess the last thing to kind of close this off is, do you both feel like work-life balance is real? Because I know for myself, I was actually out of work for a little bit last year. So I got back into it at the beginning of this year. And I would say for the most part, I think I'm at the point, because of my years of experience, where I understand what it means to have a work-life balance. But don't get me wrong. There are times when I do leave the office, work is still on my mind, because I'm either anticipating something that I need to do for the day after, or it's the need or the want to set myself up for success for the future. So maybe I will turn on my laptop before I go to sleep and just hammer out a couple emails or work on a deliverable that's probably due in a couple days. So I'm curious, do you both feel that work-life balance is a real thing?
I think it is, but you have to fight for it.
Or be willing to like put up with less.
Yes.
In some respects, for sure.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. For myself personally, I'm in a company, in an organization that does value work-life balance. I see it from the management, and that helps ease my anxiety of being like, it's 5:00, I'm off.
I'm actually in the same position. And that's, for me, the fact that I've been able to see it now with the organization that I'm with means a lot, because it's reassuring that I was never crazy about what I wanted out of my career.
Yeah, God forbid you don't want to work 14 fucking hours a day. You worthless human being. Like, it's just...
I used to be so down on myself when I wasn't putting in that time. And I would see other people do that.
And I thought there was something wrong with me. I'm like, why am I not as... But it's just like, it was a combination of the work had no meaning for me. And I was just miserable.
Well, especially when it's like all like performative.
Yeah.
where you're like, I'm going to stay until this person leaves working so that I am perceived as like also on board with the, like, but I'm not like, I'm going to stay because I really want to nail this deliverable, this presentation, whatever it is you're doing. It's like, I'm just doing this to like keep up appearances.
Mm-hmm.
I used to historically early.
Not that I've ever done that.
Yeah, no, but historically early on in my career, some of the feedback I would get from some of these bosses that I had were, hey, Nav, because you're so young in your career, you should be the first one in, last one out, and that was just the mentality, because it wasn't even a test of my productivity. It was like, hey, for visibility purposes, to make it look like you're working and that you're actually care about your job, come in at 7 a.m. and leave at 7 p.m.
Yeah, there is a definitely like age thing around that too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
For sure, it's like until your management and you've earned the right to be like, guess what? I'm leaving at 3. What are you going to do about it? Like, there's a perception that like so-and-so, just out of school, 9:30. Okay, it's your future, like, but you're gonna take an hour-long lunch, are you? Like,
but like,
wow,
that's exactly it. It's
okay.
almost like if you show up right at 9 a.m. and you're someone who's a new grad who's, again, mind you, you're coming from an environment where most likely you're probably sleeping in, skipping class. Sure, you're probably acing the exam because you're playing all-nighters, but you're not functioning in a way that's going to set you up for success for a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Chances are you go into a workplace at a finance company, at a CPG, like, for those that don't know what a CPG is, stands for consumer packaged goods. That's like
they make all the cookies.
Yeah, cookies,
like your,
pop, you name it.
Yeah, your Unilevers, your
P&Gs,
Pepsi and Cokes and P&Gs of the world.
Like, God forbid that if you're a new grad who's getting a job, who's never been accustomed to this lifestyle, and you show up to your first day at work at 9 a.m. and you see someone, they could already have a perception of you as, hey, you're committing career suicide. You're not going to make it in this organization.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we were talking about it earlier, like, at my office, there's like a co-op program that recruits like university students pretty regularly, and it's kind of an official partnership with the school, a couple schools. And it's like some of them you can tell are like ready, and some of them you can tell are not. Yeah. Like a lot of they're still in university mode, and like, I work in a tech firm, so there's beer in the fridge, and like it's a little bit relaxed, and like some of the kids are like, noon Friday, they're in the kitchen all day pounding free tall boys, and you're like, guys, like, this is still a workplace.
I feel like the other side of this of this conversation is not just the flexible work environment, but like the work environment perks, which is the beer taps.
Yeah, we have like the foosball table.
We're
going to see Captain Marvel at lunch tomorrow, just like for free.
But then, for example, you watch Captain Marvel, it's a 2-hour movie. There's probably an expectation that you're going to make it that 2 hours up some other day, right?
No.
Well, no. Part of it is that like we're software developers, like we're billable to the client.
That's true.
So we actually just bill them.
It's also a Friday. It's also a Friday, which makes sense.
Yeah, like they wouldn't do it on a Monday or Tuesday, but like,
But I mean, work-life balance can happen. It's just it needs to be a priority for you. And that will then show when you go and interview at different organizations, and when you look at what their culture is like. It's just work-life balance needs to be a priority for you. You need to find a company that fits that. And then you have to also be understanding that it may not necessarily mean that you're working at the crazy fancy CPG or whatever.
Yeah.
But you will have better mental health.
And like there's a sort of maturity level in organizations themselves that are like that. Like I find, you talk to people who are in like startup culture, and there's no work-life balance.
No,
you're basically on call
all the
day
time.
in, day out. And then like there's, like a bank where it's just like, yes, like you have to be super proper and prompt in like dress code, but they're not necessarily going to be like
pretty much interesting
in your business all night, right?
These are pretty good topics. I feel like we can do like single episodes on.
You can definitely expand on these a lot,
especially work-life balance. I think we just didn't even crack the surface yet.
There's a lot to dig into there.
It's like a first episode of a binge watch series where like they're setting the plot lines,
and we're back.
Oh man, please binge watch my show if this is the first episode you're listening to, and then please tell me if it had an effect on your anxiety. Last topic, is being the fact that both of you are writing partners, which requires the both of you to be creative when it comes to coming up with ideas. I like to consider I can't even talk. I like to consider myself a creative. I don't know if it really means anything for me to admit that, but I know at times it can be very easy sort of come up with a creative idea because of just how you feel on a certain day, based on what's inspiring you, based on other things that you've seen. But then other times it can be very difficult. It can be almost the equivalent, if you're a writer's block, almost just feeling burnt out, feeling like you can't get your head straight. Maybe you have your mind on your day job that's not allowing you to be as creative as you want to be, maybe in a side hustle or in a side project. And I'm curious, I wanted to get your theories on how you deal with creative barriers in your life. Like, what do you do to maintain that sense of creativity, that when it comes down to putting your head down and working on something that may be a passion project? So for example, for me, I make sure that when I'm getting ready to prepare for this show, that I'm in a zone where nothing's distracting me and I can literally allocate an hour. And I'm also like fed, like I'm relaxed. I'm not worrying about work, just because I know that's my most efficient, optimal time to think about how I want this show to be this week. And if I'm not like that, then I become stressed because I'm like, oh, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I just find myself in a rut. Yeah. So I'm curious, what's your theory on creative barriers and how to deal with them? And Braeden, we'll begin with you.
Yeah. So when it comes to like creative ideas, I find it's like, I have no problem coming up with ideas. I think it's almost the opposite problem where you get too many, that it's choosing which one to proceed with to like turn into something more tangible can be challenging. But where the creative barrier comes is like self-doubt 100%. When you actually say, you know what, I'm going to take idea X and I'm going to try and like turn it into, you're like, this is so stupid. Like, this is the worst idea. It's not good enough. I'm not good enough. I can't like figure it out. I'm stuck. I don't know. It all relates to sort of that anxiety that you're like, you're not capable. Like, because there's always this sort of mystery I find with creative work where you're like, some people are really good at it and a lot of people are not. And you never know if you're one of them until someone gives you like an Emmy. And you hear from those people that they're like, even I don't think, like my next idea, like I did my great show and now I'm fucked. Like I have nothing left. I'm out of the business. And so like when you're kind of like amateurs like we are, you can kind of be like, how do we find out? Like, well, Yeah,
I always have this idea or notion of like, you have to get through the crap to get to the good stuff. Exactly. So it's this idea of like, a blank page is always very daunting. A blank screen is always very daunting. But if you just have to start typing something, you just have to start writing something. And it's a muscle in my mind. It's like the more you practice it, the more you work with it, the more it starts to come to you more naturally. When I was younger, when it came to creative ideas or problem solving, or like creative problem solving, if there was a whatever, it would always be like I would craft what is the egg that I'm trying to solve, like the nugget, the egg. And then I would take my egg and I would pretend that I was a hen and I would sit on it. And this is, you guys are getting the inner workings of my mind. Anyways. And then I would go like,
I love it.
I would go on
Continue.
a walk or something with my dog and I would just let the egg sit. I wouldn't necessarily think directly about it. I would just let it be there. And then usually within 20 or 30 minutes within the walk, I would.
Yeah, I often find you, like, if you have like the discipline to sort of like focus on it on a regular basis, if not every day, like as many days as you can, great ideas will come to you when you're farthest away from somewhere where you can write it down.
So is that when you rely?
I'm always in the middle of Trinity Bellwoods Park when I'm like, that's great. Yeah, and then I have to like try and remember it until I can like get home.
Because lately I've tried to do that, where if I have a nugget of an idea, I'll either write it in my phone. I have so many weird notes now on my phone of just random words, but hopefully I remember what they mean. But because before that, I would have nuggets of ideas, but when it came down to what I needed to do, they would disappear. I couldn't think of them anymore. And it would be, it was a problem because then I was like, oh shit, like I had it before, but now it's gone. And then you would kind of run with something that sort of half baked.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier about how, you'd wake up in the middle of the night, you go, I've figured it out. I have the most perfect idea. And then you go and you like scribble it in your notebook really quickly.
You write like a handful of words that you are like, this will definitely
trigger me. I'm going to remember it.
To unlock this genius plan. And then you look at it later and you're like,
this is gibberish.
What?
This makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you've cheated yourself a little bit.
Oh,
but it is, again, it's that idea for me anyways of like, you just need to keep going through all that crap until you find something great, because your great idea isn't going to be necessarily on the surface of your thinking. It's going to be something that's a little bit deeper.
Yeah, like I think you have to know what your project is kind of in and out, and then your brain sort of does that work for you in the background in a way.
How do you both treat your collaborative sessions when it comes to actually writing down concepts? Like what is required when you guys collaborate to make sure that you get the best out of each other?
Comedy or
anything?
Yeah, I
so
guess
you guys
it
are working
depends
on
on
a
the type.
couple of scripts. Like
Yeah.
what is the like what's the environment like? Is a lot of it just a lot of text back and forth when it comes to ideas?
Kind of.
Yeah.
it's text backs and
I'll be like, this
back
is
and
broken. Why?
Yeah, like the actual process. Like what is the process like?
We text a lot. We have a shared Google Drive.
Right.
We meet weekly.
Yeah. So the way we do it now is like we're kind of each writing our own thing and then like
Coming
helping
together.
fix problems with the other
Yeah.
in that context. With sketches, it's a lot more collaborative because it's like,
What makes this?
well,
funny?
when you read through,
How do we put in
you read
another
through a
dick
script.
joke?
Yeah, you read through a script and then somebody improvises a joke
Yeah.
and it's funny. So you're like, that's going in.
Yeah.
Or like, what if we just did it like this or that or whatever? I don't know.
Because they're contained elements, right? They're like 3-4 pages. Whereas when you're looking at something like a 40-minute drama,
Yeah.
there's so much more that has to go in the background, and that's
So I have another layer to this question that I want to ask to both of you. Being that you guys are in a partnership, how do you go about providing each other feedback on the ideas, especially if you don't like what he pitched and vice versa?
Maya will be like, my idea sucks and it's stupid. And I'm like, no, it isn't.
But we're not going to use it.
I don't think we've ever had
We've never really had something like a conflict of that nature where we
Yeah.
had to be like, no, that's
Stupid.
bad.
that doesn't make
Which
sense.
was like one of the reasons our group kind of split off from the other.
Yeah.
Because
It's because we had different.
every rehearsal was that. It was just fighting over what stuff should even be a thing.
We just had very different perspectives
Yeah.
and POVs on everything.
So, and that was very stressful. And like, I remember just being so mad when we had rehearsals with like that particular group
But
because of that conflict where we were just like,
Yeah.
no, I don't agree.
Yeah.
And they hate, like, what I come up with, and I'm not wild about stuff they come up with. And it was just like, it's
Yeah.
better if we just do our own thing.
But I feel like, so we've never had a moment where it's like we've outright said to someone, I think that's bad. I don't think we've ever had that instance, which is great. If anything, it's more of like, did you think about it this way? Did you think about coming at it from this angle? Or,
it is generally pretty constructive, I guess.
yeah,
which is
it's
good
pretty yeah.
That's interesting you say that, because I found myself recently actually in the workplace dealing with a scenario where I was working with a creative team, and I guess being sort of in the position that I am and trying to meet a hard deadline, the work I was getting was not
Where you needed it to be.
where I needed it to be. And when I provided the feedback I got on that, the feedback that I got on my feedback, which is funny, was that it was too prescriptive. And then I realized then and there how, when dealing with creatives, and again, I almost put myself in their shoes, like how would have I felt knowing that I don't like it when people sort of nitpick on things that I do, rather than like sort of nitpick and tell me what to do versus trying to make it more collaborative and less prescriptive, but more so frame it up as a problem.
For sure. But I feel
Yeah.
like this instance that you're speaking about might have just been an anomaly because it sounded like you had a deadline. You had shit that needed to get done and you needed to be able to present something. So it's like, guys, we're crunch time. Like, fuck it. This is what we're doing.
Okay, so I definitely appreciate that because that's how I felt.
Yeah. And that's
when like the joy of being like completely not in the business at all is that we don't really have limits like that.
Yeah, I figured.
Yet, so we don't have to fuss about like.
Yeah.
We have 2 days to do at this time. So yeah, when there's money and like timelines involved, everything is quite a bit different. But yeah, like I've been in sort of workplace creative things where like criticism doesn't appear to make sense, or people have other agendas and they sort of say, well, I'm going to change this so that my fingerprints are on it. Creatively, and then like that can cause tension. I don't know. When you do creative stuff, you have to learn how to take criticism. Like I can be bad for it. If someone gives me notes on something I've done, I generally have to just be like, I'm gonna read it once, and then just like forget about it for a few hours, and then read it again, because it's almost always like the notes are 90% less catastrophic than they seem to me at first, because you just spent all this time being like, I have carefully put this together, and it's my little baby, and someone says like, well, your baby needs different feet and its arms are too long, and you're like, how dare you? I quit. Like, I'm never doing this again. Like, I can't handle it. And then you're later like, oh, they just wanted you to like tighten this, and then you're like, they're right, that sentence wasn't very clear, or whatever. That line doesn't work.
Where do the both of you go for inspiration?
I'll tell you one more area that doesn't work very well.
What is it?
Now completely legal marijuana.
Oh, yeah?
I remember one time I used some and then watched Blue Planet 2.
Oh, so you ended up binge-watching.
I think I watched...
It all comes back to binge-watching.
I think it was only one episode or maybe two. And I was just like on a legal pad writing like, this is like, I'm going to create the greatest fantasy epic since J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. This is so good.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, and then like the next day I was like, what the fuck did I write? I'm like, ducks, circulatory system, exclamation point. And I'm like, how do I use this? Like, it's so dumb.
That sounds like a great like avant-garde movie.
Yeah, you're just like, okay. But in your brain when you're like on weed, you're just like, this is so, yes.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the place where I go to get inspiration is I just need space. So whether it's outdoor space, whether it's space in my mind, where I find meditation can be helpful, because I'm you would never guess it, but I'm very high strung. And
really?
Yeah, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so
he didn't guess it.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I think I
right.
think it comes off very apparent that I'm high strung. But anyways, and so oftentimes my mind is running at a very accelerated pace, and so meditating and having some of that slow down and getting some space, that's what space gives me inspiration to think freely without judgment, and that's how it
for me it's the opposite, where I have to be like, in 25 minutes you are gonna fucking sit here and write everything you can think of and dump it onto the page.
So you kind of forcefully
I find I have to be like, you have an immediate deadline, and I'm like, you like an online timer or something, and you just go.
I'm kind of in the middle between both of you, because I think about some of the stuff that I've done. Like, I think about maybe putting together my website as an example. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I think I was in a space where I was like, you know what, I'm going to isolate myself and just kind of, find inspiration, maybe go work at a co-working space or go to a nice little coffee shop and just kind of think out loud and start whiteboarding. But then I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm taking too long. So that's when I was like, this Saturday, I'm going to go to Starbucks from like 12 to 6, just work on my website, just get something on paper, and then hopefully evolve it over time. And I find that a mix of both finding inspiration while also being disciplined is what kind of helped me with my output. Yeah,
because the nice thing about inspiration is it can take you wherever you want to go. But when it comes to putting pen to paper, it might not, your inspiration might be almost too lofty. And it's how do you find the minimal viable product, and how do you work off of that?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of does sound like a nice little marriage of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, that's my
That's
2
when
cents.
a lot of people love to like write in coffee shops, and I've never understood that.
I don't get it either.
It's too noisy.
I'm like, I
is.
have to be in a cave. Like, I
Yeah.
have to be like alone, or as alone as like can be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think that's a fair point to end the episode
Oh my God,
on.
we did it.
You guys did it.
Oh my
Yay.
Maya didn't cry or hit her head.
I know.
Even once.
This is
I-
like such a success for me.
I really thought there was going to be some tears on this episode, especially when it came to work-life balance.
Oh, we've had so many conversations
We
about that. Yeah.
have. But I feel like we're in a better place. I
Yeah.
think, and I think Braeden's always been in a better place. So,
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know.
if anybody listening wants to connect with the both of you or Funcussion, what can they do?
If they want to connect with me, I mean, my Instagram is probably best, _Maya.
Yeah, you got rid of your last name. Was it ever in your Instagram?
Nope.
Your last name was somewhere in one of your handles.
It's very long.
Oh yeah.
So it's difficult to want to ever use it. Yeah.
We should do a theory on long last names, even though I don't have one, but whatever.
Or complicated.
Yeah.
There's just so many consonants in my last name, and they're all jammed together. It just basically starts to look like a hieroglyph.
So is it @ Maya on everything?
_Maya.
Oh yeah. So you have a consistent handle. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I envy you. Braeden, what about you? If they
I mean, I do have an Instagram, but it's at this point it's all just photos of like the Batman shit I have in my office. So if you're interested in that, it's
It's like a Batman tribute account.
yeah, it's just Batman office decorations.
Actually, speaking of Batman, did you see the trailer for the Joker?
I did.
Now, what do
It
you
looks
think of?
good.
Yeah,
I was like, as a
into
big
it.
fan of like the Batman and like DC
DC.
comics, I was like, yeah, this looks
This
pretty
looks-
cool.
yeah,
And
this
I was like,
looks
okay,
good.
yeah, like Marvel has all the news, right, with their big
Yeah.
thing. I was like, oh, this is like still pretty cool. And like the reviews for Shazam are strong.
I heard they're pretty
so-
good. Well, that's the thing. And we're totally digressing, but I think it's worth talking about it because you brought up your Batman tribute Instagram handle or account.
It's just my name, which is Braeden.Banks.
But it's all Batman images. Which
Yeah,
is,
that was a slow transition.
it's
over
like- but I actually stopped really caring about, because I love the Batman cartoon growing up, the one that used to be on Fox.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like had a bit of a darker tone to it, and then I was always a big Batman fan. But after the Dark Knight Rises, I stopped. Like, I honestly stopped caring. Like as soon as Ben Affleck became Batman, I just didn't
No.
care.
Yeah, I mean, on the movie front, not so much.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
I never watched Suicide Squad. I haven't watched Wonder Woman yet, but I heard it's pretty good. But then it seems like DC's having a bit of a reemergence since Aquaman.
Yeah, like Aquaman was all right.
Or probably since Wonder Woman. Sorry, Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
Wonder
Wonder Woman
Woman,
was
yeah.
fairly
Wonder
good.
Yeah.
Aquaman, in my opinion, was like a step in the right direction. I think there were still some flaws in that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to see Shazam tomorrow. I'll find out.
And you're watching Captain Marvel too?
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, like kind of a weird comedy nerd thing where like we're going to be able to watch like basically back to back binge watch
It all comes back.
Marvel's
binge
Captain
watch.
Marvel from Disney
We all have problems.
and Shazam, formerly known as Captain Marvel.
Oh,
It
really?
was originally published under the name Captain Marvel, like that
Because
character.
they have similar suits.
Yeah, and so the new Captain Marvel from Marvel is a distinct character, but the one that Shazam is about was called Captain Marvel, and there was like a lawsuit between the publishers
Oh, crazy.
back in the day, so they had to change
That's
his
interesting.
his
Because
name.
I think Todd Phillips' Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, the trailer that just came out yesterday, looks awesome. When I really like a trailer, I'll watch it a couple times.
Same.
Just as pick up on small things. I've always been a big Joaquin Phoenix fan. Like, I think he's a fantastic
Yeah,
actor.
I think they did a really good casting call on that one.
To me, this is a super hot DC take.
Yeah.
That I think a couple.
I think at
others
this
are gonna
point they're just like, we're not gonna be the Disney Marvel machine, so we're
Totally.
just gonna like
But
do whatever, like throw the dice. Right?
I heard this is a standalone movie.
Yeah,
Jared
like it's
Leto's
not
getting
it's
his
not meant to
own.
be connected as far as I know to like any of the
Good.
Because I almost look at this universe.
Crappier
I
films.
almost, again, this is a super hot take, and again, feel free to disagree with me. But I almost look at the universe that this Joker lives in as being like the perfect like backstory for Heath Ledger's Joker, if it makes sense.
I mean, we've only seen like 90 seconds.
I know.
Of
Maybe
the
I'm
movie so
jumping
far.
into
So
it.
like, who knows?
Does,
It does look like a similar like lighting and tone.
Yeah, maybe that's where I
to
got
the,
it from.
Like Nolan versus Chicago.
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing, for sure.
I'm
I'm not sure where they filmed it actually, but like,
I'm honestly, if this movie kicks ass and it's really good, I'm all for a Batman universe in this sort of.
That's within.
they could go in that
Yeah.
direction. I know they're supposed to be filming like a standalone Batman that's gonna
Not
be a
even-
reboot.
Okay, so are they not doing universes? Is that how they're?
Yeah, like as far as I understand, they're kind of, or the connectivity between the universes is going to be tangential at best.
Oh yeah.
Where I don't imagine they plan to do like another team up, and I don't know if Ben Affleck or Henry Cavill are going to return. They're going to bring back Wonder Woman because it was a hit,
Yeah.
and Aquaman made them a bunch of money, so those characters will stick around. But like, I don't think they're going to do like a. They've given up on the dream of mimicking Marvel's like
Marvel's, yeah.
I think
TV
it's
series.
fine. I think
Which-
they should always
like-
differentiate themselves. So
And then if you want to find Funcussion on Facebook,
So yeah, we have a Facebook
it's
page.
Funcussion.
I'm going to
TO.
turn that into mostly Batman content soon as well.
I told you we were
Just
digressing.
to try and plug that in there.
Yeah, please do. And if you want to connect with New Theory Radio, it's at New Theory Radio on everything, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to connect with me, I don't have consistent social media handles. It's at N Nanwa on Twitter and at Nav Nanwa on Instagram. Peeps, thank you so much for joining me. This was
Thanks
fun.
for having us.
Yeah,
having us.
we'll have to bring you both back. Do you guys have like any shows coming up?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're on like a hiatus
Oh, okay.
for that.
It's a little fun.
At this time.
hiatus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. That'll do. That's all. It's all good.
maybe when
Thanks
Jess-
for reminding me.
Oh,
maybe
I'm
when our
sorry.
director is like
Joking.
on a summer break or something, she'll be like free.
It's okay. I'm sure you guys will go home and
Mhm.
something. All right. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in, and you will hear all of us next time.